Welcome to another episode of B2B Marketing Futures. Today we are diving into one of the most persistent challenges in modern marketing, pipeline growth. Despite increasing budgets and smarter tech stacks, many teams will struggle to generate consistent, high quality pipeline. In this episode, we are joined by three marketing leaders who are tackling this issue head on. From redefining ICPs and building brand-driven demand to improving alignment with sales, they bring rich hands-on experience. So let's kick things off with introductions. I would love to hear who you are, your role, and your current focus. Who wants to start?
Let's start. Shadia Spar. I am the Director of Integrated Marketing and Global Marketing at Proofpoint. I've been there for over 5 years, managing everything from integrated marketing campaigns that are launched globally and centralized through my team. Also ABM and paid media programs, as well as globalization and localization across the globe.
Thank you so much. Welcome. Bhargav, would you like to go next?
Yeah, for sure. My name is Bhargav. I'm currently a senior product marketing manager at Launch Darkly, where I just started leading product marketing for their core product. That's really gotten them to where they are, built their brand. There's a brand already. I love talking about it. Previously, my last couple of roles, I led marketing at an HR tech company called Searchlight, which was then acquired, and eventually ended up leading marketing for the US for the new company. Decided I just want to go back to being a product marketing IC for a little bit. I love it so much. And so that brought me to Launch Darkly.
But let's start discussing what's the real pipeline problem you are solving today, and how do you know?
I can jump in if you want, or Bhargav, you're welcome to. So for us, it's multifaceted when it comes to marketing, right? The fun part of what we do is really figuring out the mix of, is it volume? Is it velocity? Is it quality? Is it attribution? Only, to help us continue filling the funnel, not from the top, but also moving these leads into mid stage and then pipeline. We had the challenge of trying to figure out this pipeline mystery and examined everything. We went back to the drawing board. Are we getting the right leads to sales at the right time? Is the lead quantity, cost, or quality the most important for this particular campaign? Because obviously that does change based on the campaign. Is the follow-up process effective? Is the messaging reaching the right audience? Is our attribution model effective? Just to name a few, we dove into all of it. We dove really deep into analysis and worked really closely with sales so that we could examine leads at all stages in the funnel. I found that it all started with honing in on the right target accounts and ICPs. It also has a lot to do with the quality of leads that you're putting into the funnel. Obviously, the lower funnel leads are ready to have a sales conversation and move to pipeline faster. But you also still need to fill that top of funnel. It's just as important so that we can keep feeding that beast, right? However, those leads do not get the same touch as the lower funnel leads. Those leads definitely needed more nurture, whether that was internal programs, webinars, emails. They needed to go through a process where they were scored out, where they were ready to then have a sales conversation. Working closely with the sales team to monitor the leads has been crucial to solving our problem. So it went from, is it the right lead? Is it the attribution? And then really ended with, we have to work as closely as possible to have that open line of communication with sales and determine if it's the messaging, if it's the content, the list, or the follow-up process. And whatever that was, whatever that issue was that was stalling it, we were able to then course correct really quickly.
Yes. So again, thank you, Joaquin, for having me. I'm really excited about this opportunity to join this panel with you all. I am Nicole Drake. I'm a senior product marketing manager at Vectra AI, which is an AI cybersecurity company that focuses on protecting modern networks from modern attacks. A little bit more background on me. I've been working in tech at different SaaS companies for the last 10 years in different marketing roles. A little bit of sales as well, but I don't really promote that. But for the most part, marketing positions, across tech. And again, very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And yeah, Bhargav, you were going to tell us about the problems you're facing with pipeline. Please.
Yeah, I think pipeline is always an interesting one. So the thing that I've always found most effective whenever I enter a new business, and I just did this at my current company as well, is I'm a very revenue and pipeline oriented product marketer. And so I always start with, what is the revenue goal? What is the pipeline goal? And then there's two natural metrics that come into that, is what is your win rate and what's your pipe coverage? And that's the first area that I tend to look at. If pipe coverage or win rate are typically flat lagging behind or falling behind, that's when you immediately know that, hey, there's probably something in the sales funnel that I need to start looking into. And then before pipeline, of course, is all of the leads, all of the initial sales conversations. And we can look at that to better understand what is going on up there, right? Are we sending poor quality leads coming into the funnel, whether that's from marketing, sales, partners, whatever other channels you may have available to you. And that's the point at which you can really have an accurate understanding of where is it that I need to go and spend my time. And most of my career has been in early startups. So I'm actually very used to walking into what I call a raging dumpster fire. And there's a million problems you can go and fix. Very pleasantly though, in my current role, great to walk in, see like, hey, things aren't on fire. Maybe there's a little smoke here and there, but what company doesn't have that? But if it's not pipe coverage and win rate, that's when I like to look at, okay, are we moving the right volume of leads through the funnel? Because maybe for this quarter, pipe coverage is great. What about next quarter? What about 3 quarters out? Because those sales quotas, they don't get any lower during the year. And so that's when it's really important to start understanding what is driving the most pipeline. Do I need to double down on, hey, sales outbound is working great. How do we do that? Or maybe there's a big gap in like AE outbound, but SDR outbound is doing great. Maybe the gap is in marketing. Maybe marketing is doing amazing and we can go make a case for, hey, we should increase our marketing budget. We're seeing field marketing is doing really well as an example. Hey, most of our pipe is driven by bottom of funnel advertising. And so I think of it less as like, because the problem is always different at every company. Really think of it as like, what is happening in the system? And I personally hate when the blame immediately goes straight to demand gen teams. Everyone loves to say, oh, marketing's not generating enough leads. Oh, marketing's sending over low quality leads. Well, like, let's look also at what's happening to those leads. Are they getting the right information at the right time to be able to have good conversations? A few companies ago, I'll share one story. When I was at a company called Harness, one of the things I had to do as a PMM is we had a ton of great volume coming in at the top of the funnel for one of our products, but that was not converting to actual sales deals. We diagnosed the problem as, hey, the inbound SDRs, they're not quite sure how to handle this. It's a new product, different persona that they're not used to. And so I actually spent 4 weeks being an inbound SDR. I would go and generate my own leads, and then I would go and do the emailing, the cold calling, all of that stuff myself to really figure out, hey, what's going on here, and build that playbook for inbound SDRs to go and actually convert. And then I think it won't surprise anyone here to hear that it worked. Right. And suddenly we were able to say, yeah, we're generating leads consistently. They're high quality leads. The volume's good. And SDRs can now convert. All they have to do is follow the playbook. Go and follow the script.
Yeah, I love your way of thinking that actually you need to analyze where the pipeline is broken, right? And if it's broken, in many cases it's working. Yeah, and we also talk about, Bhargav, the importance of having a brand, and because it's very easy to blame the demand gen team that things are not working right. But if you don't have a brand, actually it's way harder to create demand gen playbooks or sales playbooks, because when you can connect emotionally with your consumers, everything runs more smoothly. I would love to hear everyone's thoughts on that topic.
Yeah, with brand is an interesting one. I think especially in modern times, you hear like the resurgence of brand from a lot of like marketing leaders, a lot of marketing influencers. And it's interesting because brand is really about that authentic connection to your customers. And in the AI era, when it's easy for anyone to go and spin up messaging, to go and spin up an ad or spin up like a blog, it really comes down to how are you connecting with your customers. And I think like Chadia, you'll probably resonate with this one, right? Like we spend a lot of time on how do we convert the high intent bottom of funnel leads, but actually most of the market, I think the stat is only about 5% of your buyers are ever in market at any given time. So most of your time actually is 95% of your market needs to be warmed up people are naturally curious. And you know, I know we're going to talk about content later, but like this is where the role of great content, the role of speaking to your audience, the role of like user generated content, especially these days, like it gets really important. And the other part of brand too is like, I think of it as like the tide that raises all ships, right? When your brand is performing really well, all of your other metrics suddenly do well. People pick up your cold calls, your CPL goes down, your search, your branded impressions and stuff go up. You get more people to the website, more inbound, like all of this good stuff happens when you have a strong brand. I think the challenge is really like, when do you invest in brand and how much do you invest?
No, I wholeheartedly agree, right? Your brand is a massive driver. And then having the right message coupled with that brand, the right message at the right time. And I know we're going to talk about the content strategy as we go on in this conversation. Exactly, like Bhargav was saying, having a brand that makes it easier to be recognized, that people are aware of, that will pick up the phone if you're calling, that will open an email and download an asset, is a massive driver. And then from there, it's great. We have their attention, we have their awareness. Now, how do we convert them?
Yeah. And Nicole, before we move into the next question, I know you have some thoughts about misalignment between field execution and the ICP fit as a cause of actually having problems with pipeline. Would you like to tell some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I also just wanted to echo what, everyone has already mentioned. I think also with brand, just going back to your previous question really quick, it's really interesting with brand. It depends on where your company is, right? Whether it's a startup or a large enterprise that's already established, especially like for me and Chadia, we're both in cybersecurity, right? So cybersecurity is a very saturated market. So it's really rare to not even come across, directly come across another competitor, usually within the pipeline or in early conversations with prospects and customers. So for me, what we do at Vectra right now, again, this kind of touches on our content strategy that I know we're going to discuss in a minute, but we really focus on answering 3 questions: why change, why now, and why Vectra. Why Vectra meaning, whatever company you work for, right? And messaging and related content to address the needs of our customers throughout their entire buyer's journey. So then that way they can move through the funnel, hopefully at a quick pace, but you never know in high tech sales. But, we want to address the needs of our customers. And to your other question, Joaquin, you can't really address your customers' needs and their pain points if you don't know your ICP like the back of your hand. So that's something at Vectra and my team are really, really strongly focused on. We recently revamped our ICP for the entire field. So ICP, again, ideal customer profile. It includes multiple, personas from the executive suite, kind of the decision makers all the way down to the end users, because what we found in my industry, the messaging is not always going to resonate the same with each of those personas. And it's okay to say no to, that's what we preach to our sales team is if you are talking to someone who's a prospect, or maybe they're not even a prospect, maybe they're already, kind of moving through the funnel a bit, and you find out that, hey, they don't have an active, network need at this time, or they don't have, they're not interested in investing in the cloud, or they're not interested in using AI, which, is kind of rare nowadays with all the buzz around AI, but I'm just using that as an example. It's okay for your field to tell them, hey, I don't think we're a good fit for you. This is where we are at. Maybe you should look at this and be on your way, because at the end of the day, you don't want to waste your time, your field's time, and the customer's time, right? If you can't force a pigeon in a circle, what's that analogy sort of saying? So that's kind of what I preach and the rest of my team preaches. So.
And how are you refining your ICP and targeting? Is it at an account level? So accounts that are fundamentally a good fit for your business based on several signals, or at a personal level, decision maker? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great
If I could layer on a question, actually, Nicole, because that's super interesting, because we talk about refining ICP, but you said redefining ICP. I'm really curious about like the why and the how.
Yeah, so I'll answer Joaquin's question first. So when we redefined our ICP, which again was pretty recently within the last year or so, we kind of took in a multitude of factors. So we took in organizational size. So we're talking large enterprises, some of our customers are Fortune 500 customers, and then also small to medium sized businesses. So we're talking teams of like maybe like 1 to 10 of a security team, right? So maybe even smaller. Maybe they don't even have a full security team. Maybe they just have like an IT team that their security is kind of lumped into, right? So we kind of shaped it into a pyramid with all those factors, and then we also attributed our personas to each of those levels and what they're looking for, what use cases they're looking for, what buyer needs they're looking for, even like budget constraints. You can kind of get an idea of how much budget, a larger enterprise would have versus a smaller business, right? Or startup, if you will. So we kind of took all that information, did our own internal analysis, and then we created our refreshed ICP, if you will. And we shared that with our field. And we told them like, hey, this is the sweet spot of our ICP pyramid. This is where you should focus. The others, yes, we obviously wouldn't turn away business if we get, a prospect from one of those customers or an opportunity. But, this is where our sweet spot is. This is where we, kind of deliver the most value to these kinds of customers.
Yeah. And Nicole, to add on to what you were saying too, and we've seen this too, right? We went from this spray and pray approach, as I like to call it, right, to how do we really hone in on our ICPs and use a much more targeted approach? And Joaquin, to your question, we looked at it from an account perspective, not at the actual lead level, but at the account. What are the accounts that sales really wants to get into? So we started there, took those, and then looked at it from an intent signals perspective. We use Sixth Sense. I know there's a lot of different platforms to do that, whether it's Priority Engine, Sixth Sense, Bombora, so on. But running them through that, we were able to really get a sense of which of these accounts really is in the buying phase, whether they're researching, they're out there looking at competitors, and able to get us in front of them. There is no real one size fits all. So what we were able to do was look at their specific intent signals. But in taking that and in looking at those accounts, we then were able to even dive deeper into segmentation to build that buying group. Because I think Nicole touched on this too. Like, it's not a single person we're looking at here. We're looking at building the entire buying group within that account and that organization. And then how do we segment by that? Is it by region? Are we looking at company size? Are we looking at their product interest, their industry, their titles, what they're researching, what they're reading and downloading? So it's a combination of all of that. It's coming up with that formula, building that buying group, and then able to really do an omni-channel approach to surround that buying group in how they buy, right? Whether that's through paid digital, through email, through events, and so on, to really get those leads that we know are warm and that are ready to have that conversation, but faster into pipeline.
And a question, Bhargav, you mentioned that you used to analyze customer conversations and actually acting as an SDR or a BDR. How did that inform and sharpen your ICP? Please tell us about that.
I always like to say customers are cheat codes. A lot of times the best messaging comes straight from the customer's mouth. Like, they will say the thing that you have been struggling to articulate for weeks, sometimes months, and you talk to 10 people, 15 people, usually within 7 or 8, you'll have a pattern, but like one of them will say something and you'll just be like, that's it. Like, that is exactly, like, that would make great ad copy. That would make a great H1 on like our webpage for this sort of thing. And I think like when you're thinking about like how customer conversations help to refine your ICP, well, there's actually like a couple different angles, right? Like there's that top down approach, maybe it's not quite top down, or like the data driven approach of like what's working and are we actually going after the right accounts that like Nicole and Shadia were talking about. And then there's also the approach of, which I actually learned from a great positioning book called Obviously Awesome by April Dunford, which is, you start with the value that you're providing and you start asking the question from the inside out of like, okay, well, who actually cares about the value we're providing? Who actually has the problem that we are trying to solve? And sometimes that will lead to an interesting conversation of like, is there an underserved segment in the market that we didn't think about before? And those don't happen often, but like that's always a great epiphany moment of like, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but like, we should be going after this market, or like actually, at my last company, an example, we were trying to support companies who bought AI tools to help their people actually adopt them. So we had a segment we had lumped together of just companies that buy AI tools like Microsoft Copilot or GitHub Copilot. And when we did that bottom up exercise and we segmented out the market, we were actually able to say no to a whole section of the market that was building their own AI, that were building feature enhancements to their AIs, or that they're using it to make marginal improvements. And we were able to say, okay, actually the segment that matters are the teams that are trying to use AI to fundamentally change how their business operates, or they're starting out with like AI. And that was like a massive shift in how we built the product and how we ultimately positioned everything, and the marketing and the sales work that we did afterwards. It's hugely important to get that right, which is why, like, when Nicole was saying like, yeah, we had to redefine our ICP, I'm like, whoa, that you don't say that often, especially once you feel like you've got it figured out.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the reason I should pivot, maybe give some more background to why we did that. So we have a platform, we call it the Vectra AI platform. We started with Network, otherwise known as NDR, right? Not to get technical, but we have expanded this platform in the last like literally 2.5 years exponentially. So we also cover cloud. We also cover identity. We also offer managed services. So the reason we redefined it is because our field was so used to only selling the network side instead of the entire platform. It wasn't, clicking for them that we are a platform. We're not just a modular, product-centric, go-to-market company, and that it actually all fits together and again provides more value to the customers that way, which is why we did it, because they were focused on like very specific niche use cases around network and things like that we do address, but we also have more to offer than that. So that was a big pivot, again, from leadership all the way down to our entire field and our ADRs.
Really interesting. And Bhargav, you were mentioning, like, sometimes you hear from customers those phrases that really tells you, well, this is actually what I was looking for to tell to the rest of the market about my product. Is that the kind of content that you feel that moves the needle? Or what kind of messaging and assets have you found actually support funnel progression? This is an open question.
Yeah, nice segue. Sometimes I think that there's a broader conversation about content strategy here, but like one of the things with like content people that I've noticed is often where content sits in the marketing org is a big indicator of what kind of content will be created. So like when it sits in product marketing, for example, it tends to be more tied to what is the customer saying, what is the specific value the customer is trying to drive, and you create like high impact pieces of content. But the challenge is that sometimes the volume is not there because there's not, once you figure out the core problems of your customer, they don't change that often. The core thing that your customer wants you to talk about, that doesn't change that often. And so what I found is most impactful is when you can create like a few really strong hero pieces and use like I call it a reverse content funnel, but there's a ton of other names for it, where you take that hero asset and you can split that up. Like a strong bottom of funnel ebook, for example, into, there's a bunch of middle of funnel content we can create out of this. There's maybe infographics we can put in syndication. Like maybe there's a bunch of social media posts. Maybe there's a bunch of blogs. Maybe there's like a podcast topic about it. And those are the things where now you're taking like a really strong point of view on the market, and you're saying it in 10, 15 different ways and like 10, 15 different channels. You get a ton of pull from it. I think if there's like a story there, so the inbound SDR story I was telling, where I had to go and do that. So actually that product at Harness, I was brought in because it wasn't finding traction in the market. And so like first, the problem was actually the ICP was wrong. We were going after the wrong persona entirely. After having those customer conversations, just talking to a bunch of people, came out with 2, maybe 3, like really strong points of view on what is the kind of content that this persona actually cares about and wants to learn about. And we were able to turn those into, like, LinkedIn was our strongest performing channel at the time. We were able to drive tons of value from LinkedIn and save a bunch of budget from like, hey, we'll send you a free gift card, or like we'll send you a hoodie, or we'll send you this book if you take a call with us, to people were organically saying like, actually I'm really interested. I'm curious about what you have to say. Like, I'd love to take a sales call with you. And obviously, I think that makes our demand gen partners very happy, because we all know content is king in all marketing. So having good content and having the right ways to distribute it, I think is like the distribution is a really underrated part of thinking about like content strategy. You're muted, Joaquin.
Can I hear you?
Thank you so much. Tadia, you mentioned that you were using intent data to find accounts that were actively searching for solutions. Then do you use also intent data to create content that is localized or high intent content across regions?
Absolutely. So it's more than just the intent. It's looking at the entire buyer's journey and where they are in that buyer's journey and really focusing on the type of content that they would need at that right time. And then yes, also localizing the content. We've really seen an uptick in the adoption and download of content when it is in language. Even case studies that are in country tend to perform a lot better versus case studies that come from, let's say, the Americas and are being used in Asia Pac, right? Like, so there are some nuances there that we absolutely look into. But when we start working and, it was mentioned working with the PMM team on building that content strategy, it's more than just, hey, we need one ebook, one white paper, maybe, a top of funnel infographic. It's what does the buyer's journey look like here and what are they looking for as they start to progress? So if we're bringing in leads from a top of funnel program, are we offering those infographics, videos, short snippets that they're able to quickly download, build some awareness? As they start to get closer into that middle of funnel, right? Seeing their intent and seeing them move through the buyer's journey, that's when we start to offer some of the meatier content, whether it's third-party research reports, ebooks, white papers, demos, and then we move them again, right? As they get into that bottom of funnel, now they're ready for more of the data sheets and more of the speeds and feeds type of conversation. So once they get into pipeline and they're having a sales conversation, they have gone through this entire process. They have learned about us as they've progressed through our funnel. And that's been a huge help, right? I mean, offering someone who is just learning about the company, learning about what we do, data sheet probably won't go very far, right? They won't download it, or if they do, they won't really read it. But as we start to build that relationship and take them through that journey, looking at where they are in the journey and giving them the right content at the right time has absolutely increased our pipeline.
Yeah, I think you touched on something so important, having the right content at the right time. And that's very linked with the next topic is about channels, right? So not all the channels are for different stages of the funnel. So some channels perform better at the top of the funnel, others at the bottom. Please tell us about how are you sequencing them? Are you seeing better results from paid, outbound, field, or partner channels?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So it's also the combination, right? But it is sequencing the way that they're going through. So for us, let's say, we work through tier 1 media programs for content syndication and demand gen. With those, we have a set of assets that we know are the right assets at that time. So these are usually middle of funnel, but more in that top part of the middle of funnel, where they're still in an awareness phase, but they're starting to move a little bit. And as they're building into that consideration, like fully consideration phase, we offer assets through these third-party syndicators that will help move them along. They're also then being targeted through other databases, through third parties that we're also contracted with. Once we get those specific leads into our system, they then go into a nurture process. And in that nurture process, they are served content that will also further move them from that consideration to the decision phase. That content starts, like I mentioned earlier, to get more into what is the actual product, what does it do, versus, hey, here are the pain points. We hear you, we see you, we know what your persona is experiencing and what keeps you up at night. Then it's like, well, this is how it solves it. That's the question we get to. And as they start to score out of that process, they go into an outreach process with our inside sales team. Inside sales will then start to reach out through their emails, their offers, and calls. And that's when it either ends up with field or partner sales teams. So it's a fully sequenced process, but we never do the marriage, as I call it, the marriage proposal when someone is still, looking at a LinkedIn ad, right? It's not like we're serving them the asset that's ready to say, hey, take a meeting, let's have this conversation. They're nowhere near ready for that.
Makes a lot of sense. I love the concept of the field insights instead of just selling, right? They are when people give you insights, you really value that as a consumer, right?
Exactly. And for the buying group, I think that's crucial, right? Like, because then they're able to really take that back to the entire buying group. We know it's not one person that's that's making this decision for the most part, right? So having that and arming them with that information as they're going through this process absolutely makes us a partner versus a vendor.
Yeah. Nicole Varga, I'm very keen to hear also about your sequences from paid social, SEO, or coordinations with fields. Do you agree with what Chadia just shared?
So yes, I do agree with what Chadia, has shared. It's interesting for what we've seen at Vectra, because I can only speak, for my current role right now. There are certain channels that definitely resonate more with our buyers than others. So like, for example, we actually found that email nurture doesn't really move the needle as much as our paid ads or as much as a webinar or, something like that. We also engage with we call them MSSP, which is basically our channel and partner, distribution channel. That is a huge focus for Vectra this year and moving forward. Our partners are huge in giving us a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of, low hanging fruit there right now. So we are very focused on like amplifying them, enabling them. And again, it's not from like a hero, we've all mentioned it. There's no like one golden bullet of a piece of content that's going to enable every single partner or enable every, certain persona to move them through the channel. So for us, it's really important on understanding the seller's needs, whether that's partner, whether that's our field. Some of our field, we have, kind of industry segments of our field. So like we have a specific federal team. They actually are really, really successful in the Americas. So their content and messaging and go-to-market is very different from the rest of our field in Americas or even in Europe and Asia. So we, are a little bit more nuanced because, at Vectra, we're kind of like, we say we're a startup, but we're really not. We're like a growing startup. That's what our CEO likes to say. So we like to be nimble and flexible, but at the same time, we're trying to put those processes in place now. But yeah, I think it's just, again, echoing, it's a right place at the right time and making sure they know what the right story is for that specific opportunity or a customer.
The one thing I would add on to that is absolutely different personas resonate differently. Working with dev tools and then moving to HR tech, I learned that the hard way with my budget the very first time. I'm like, oh, what if we just lift and shift some of the great ideas there? Got laughed off the table by HR teams. Like that would never work for us. Like developers love free stuff. We think that's a gimmick and that erodes brand trust. The other element to that is also like stage of company growth. Like we were talking about brand earlier, like one of the things I've always found since most of my career is in early startups is like field events, while expensive, are some of the highest bang for your buck you can have early on. You're offering something new, you're having real conversations with people. Like not only are you learning about your ICP and your messaging and all of that, but people are more likely to take calls with you when people buy from people, right? When they have a face, when they trust you. It matters a lot. And then, obviously, you should always have field marketing. I used to be a field marketer myself. I'm a little biased. But then there are all the other channels, right? As you start generating content, maybe there's executive buyer dinners up and down. Like it's stage of company. It's like what persona. It's like what stage of the sales cycle you're in. Like maybe you're talking to the EBs, right? And an EB dinner is the best way to go and get someone that's like really, really late in their decision cycle versus like, hey, maybe we're going to invite a bunch of CIOs to this like round table versus like, hey, let me take you out for dinner.
The only thing I would say about the sales relationship that I wouldn't want to miss in this is really having the open line of communication with sales at all times. And that's a massive driver in the success and getting leads into pipeline. If we are buying leads, if we are running programs internally, externally, however we're doing it, right? And we're putting these programs in and marketing is saying, look, I delivered 10,000 leads for you this quarter, but none of these are converting, but we're not asking sales. There's a massive miss and a disconnect. So one is starting and sitting at the table, looking at what the sales goal looks like. What is their goal? And aligning our pipeline and demand gen goals to that so that we are working hand in hand. We're a team. We're definitely not an opposing function. So getting that first, aligning there and knowing that their goal and our goal are aligned and our success depends on their success. Massive game changer, right? And I know kind of goes without saying, but I've also been in organizations and companies where that was news to people. It was really not what they looked at doing. And then from there, as we deliver these leads, as they come in weekly, monthly, however it is, I actually have weekly collaboration calls set up with sales teams, whether it's inside sales, field sales, or sales leadership. and it varies depending on the time of the quarter, to go through these lists and say, okay, is list A performing? When you are calling these leads, are you getting people that want to have a conversation, or are you getting people that don't remember downloading that asset? Very big, right? Like a massive difference. That has helped us because as we continue to plan the next quarter, the next half, the next year, it helps us refine in real time of what's working, what's not. If we're seeing a shift in that market, they see it first. So for us, it really gives us the tools to help look into the future and make these changes as we go. And then also another one is being part of the QBRs, hosting QBRs, right? And diving deep into each of the programs and saying, is the demand gen activity working for what you need? Are you getting the conversations you wanted to have? Or are these more of, hey, these are more nurture leads, we might need to focus here? And people have mentioned on the call, right? There are different programs that work depending on who the persona is, what industry we're going after. Is it a direct mail program that is really performing? Or do some people look at that as a giveaway and think, no, we don't want to do it? Is it these events where you're taking people out to dinner and those may resonate in some segments, but not in others?
I would also be remiss, Joaquin, just to touch on two things and kind of piggybacking on what both Bhargav and Chadia has mentioned earlier. One is on the content strategy. So I actually have a very unique view of content marketing or content strategy, if you will. So yes, it typically is owned by marketing and or product marketing, but to me, everybody in the company owns content strategy. And the reason I say that is because I'm pretty sure all of us have experience where we'll create a piece of content, an infographic, a blog, whatever it is, a slide deck, and sales or biz dev or someone else will take that content and they will do their own little spin on it. And then that is what they'll share, right? So the reason I say that is content strategy is key to any company, especially in today's day and age. Like we have to have the right story and message that is really nuanced and really targets our ICP really, really well. So I just wanted to call that out in addition to, again, Bhargav, had a bunch of, comments on that, which I agree on. There's no one piece of golden nugget content that's going to move the needle across the board. But I just have a very unique view on that. So I just wanted to share that with you all. That's just my view.
I'm very curious to know what techniques have you seen in companies that you've worked for to make people, maybe technical people who are not writing content every day, to write content, because that's an amazing way of knowledge sharing. Then of course you can transform that into a lot of things, and from a marketing perspective, but also from processes to improve things. It's such a powerful cultural thing in organizations.
Yeah, that's a great question. I really focus, me and my extended team in product marketing, we really focus on making it simple. So a lot of templates for both marketing and sales in terms of like battle cards, even blogs, data sheets. We templatize everything. So then they can just kind of fill in the blanks. Usually we fill it in for them. We were like, hey, this is kind of what you should focus on, but go for it. Because we also don't want to lose that like individual voice, right? Like these, especially with sales, they're on the front lines talking to customers every day. So they know what customers are asking. So there's that. Another thing is just the formats of content. So for example, we actually kind of rebranded our Vectra AI podcast literally in March of this year. So we started it last year and now we have like 4 different shows on it. So we have one that's like focused on market trends and like the general industry. It's not really like company Vectra specific, but it's overall trends. And we invite customers, we invite analysts on there and they kind of give their points of view. We also have a show that's just focused on AI. AI is a big buzzword right now. Again, kind of industry trends. So we have that. We also have, because we're in cybersecurity, we focus on attacks. So like literally, what are the attacks that customers are facing today? Again, that's more like industry related. It's not really like why Vectra is so special, etc. And then we also have our other show, which is, it's basically, we call it our product briefing. So that's like releases, new features, new capabilities, things like that. And we produce those weekly. We have our releases monthly at Vectra. So we have monthly product releases. So we're always kind of on top of that. Yeah, that's kind of long-winded, but that's just examples of what we've been doing recently.
It's amazing. I'm full of ideas now.
Yeah. And sorry, I don't want me to hijack this, but I just wanted to echo what Chadia said about pipeline and channel. Again, it's just so important to know your ICP, know when to say no, know what content is, available for them, what their resources are, and to just go with it. We actually just launched, like literally last week, we did a pitch competition to the entire field because we revamped our messaging and our ICP, as I already mentioned. So everybody in the field was eligible to submit a pitch. We told them, even posted on LinkedIn, didn't need slides, nothing. We kind of just gave it like, no clear guidelines, no strict guidelines. And the field was really engaged. They got a prize. There was like 3 winners. And so we do a lot of like interactive activity with them to be lockstep with them. We also, are on QBRs. I have monthly sales all hands updates is what we call them, that product marketing does with the entire field, just to tell them what's going on outside of QBRs as well. And even with marketing and product, because I actually sit in both marketing and product orgs at my company right now. So we have marketing QBRs, we have product QBRs, and then we take all of that feedback, not just from sales, but from analysts, from customers, from what we're hearing directly, and we kind of just bundle it all together. So I just wanted to echo what Chadia said, that it's so important to just be lockstep with your field in every aspect of go-to-market and messaging.
Tadia, Nicole, Bhargav, thank you so much for sharing such an honest and practical insights, and from rethinking ICPs and aligning brand with demand to creating content that actually converts and building real sales marketing partnerships. It's clear that there's no single fix for the pipeline problem, but there are smart ways to approach it. For our audience, if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow B2B Marketing Futures for more conversations like this. And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts, what's working for you when it comes to pipeline growth. Until next time, thank you so much for listening.